It is.
Didn't
Okay.
mean to do that.
And before I get started, Lynette, or anyone can answer this, am I pinned to your screen in both my cutting board, this one, and my frame?
Yes,
You are? I am?
I can see both.
Wonderful. Good. That is wonderful. Okay. So my name is Brooke. I know some of you have been lifelong friends of Just Roots, and you probably don't know me yet because I just moved here from Louisiana, where I ran a similar organization to Just Roots, I admit, Maria, and that was focused on food access, inequality, and community building surrounding food. So I feel like I fit right in here, and I've just been absolutely floored and excited about everything that Greenfield has to offer and how tightly ingrained the community is. So thank you for letting me be here, and I'm excited to be cooking. I have a little bit of a background as a line cook. I've worked in vegan kitchens and, well, really all kinds of kitchens, doing prep and line work. And I'm by no means a very good knife skills person, and I like to just wing recipes. So be patient with me on that. I'm not a perfect cook by any means, but I think we're all learning, and that's exciting. And my major passion and drive around cooking is cooking large meals for community members. And so I'm really excited to have the chance to do that. Can everyone hear me clearly?
Yes.
Good. I have a white noise machine on so that my dog doesn't hear our housemates and bark. So hopefully that works. Well, so what I like to do is prepare myself to get everything out. I'm sure you all already have your ingredients out on the counter. Welcome everyone who's coming in. But the most important stuff is having your olive oil, your vinegar. If you wanted to use apple cider vinegar or rice vinegar, pretty much anything works. I like using ACV because it's nice and strong. Peanut butter, or some of you have an alternative butter source, nut butters or seed butters. And some soy sauce. Mine's gluten-free, and we will be using just a little bit of that. So I'm glad everyone has a little extra to take home. Brown sugar. If you're using the kind we sent you in the box, it's really fine grated, which is nice, but there's also options to use maple syrup, stevia, or other sweeteners if you don't want to do brown sugar. And then of course, salt and pepper and our vegetables. And I think we can get started. Does anyone have questions before we get rolling on the recipe?
Yes, somebody asked about Emily not here this time, I think.
Right, that's important. So yeah, I was just hired as the new community engagement coordinator by Just Roots. So part of my role is to be teaching these cooking classes. And if y'all miss Emily, Emily can definitely come back and wants to join in some of the classes. But for now, it's going to be me and Lynette running them. And we'll probably have some guest visitors from Just Roots pop in here or there. Emily is still with Just Roots, is just being able to prioritize and focus a lot of the other stuff that she's really good at and no one else is good at. So we need her to be doing it. So yeah, Emily will pop in and out and you'll see Emily soon. But thanks for your patience because this is my first week doing the Zoom cooking class, and Zoom is very different than in person. So hopefully I can be exciting and fun. So if you haven't yet, you can wash your...
Penelope has another question.
Sorry, I can't see everyone's screen. Who has a question?
Penelope. Hi. How do I make your work? I've got the other Just Roots host pinned for some reason, and I would rather have your workspace pinned. How do I do that?
You can pin both me waving in this screen and my workspace by clicking the right hand. There's 3 dots.
It just says chat.
Just chat. Yeah.
It didn't work.
When I click those dots, So she just got unpinned.
Oh, and
It should be pinned on her screen already.
Okay, now I have the option. Thanks.
You
I
got
got-
it? Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
No problem. And then this is not necessary if you have questions or anything, but sometimes it helps to mute your mic just in case it's picking up background noise. But please feel free to just interrupt me and ask questions when you have questions. All right, let's get started. So the first thing that I want us to work on is getting these carrots chopped up in whatever way you please. There's 3 different ways I'll show you. And the reason being is that we want them to start marinating. We're quick pickling without using heat and without using a lot of time. So we want to get those in a solution for, at least 15 to 20 minutes so that they uptake some of the flavors that are going into it. So there are 3 options that you can use. I'm going to use a grater just to demonstrate it, a little peeler, and a knife, and probably just chop them up. It does not have to be perfect. It can look however you want. These are just toppings going inside your spring roll. So I'll do a little bit of each. And if you're grating, use the thickest because you'll be there for ages if you try to use the small ones. You can peel your carrots. I like to not peel them because I know they're local from a farm that's organic and a lot of the good nutrients are in the skins. And so are yours. Yours are local and organic, so. And what I'm gonna do once I'm finished with this is just put them into a bowl to get ready for the next section. And just like I said, I hope everyone can see this, you can do any sort of process. We're just trying to increase the surface area or the amount that's exposed to the vinegar solution so that it uptakes the flavor quicker. So that's why I'm showing 3 different kinds. And the nice thing about this recipe in spring rolls is nothing is science. It's more of an art, and you can flavor things however you'd like to. You can make more carrots, you can make less. Sometimes I like to do this recipe instead of using sweet potato with like a pounded chicken or meat. But if we have time, we can go over some other alternatives to put into there. And maybe Lynette, if you remind me, we can talk about what other things we like to add in spring rolls as a group. So I'm doing a little mix of grated carrots, chopped carrots, and sort of carrot peels. This is my least favorite vegetable to chop because carrots like to run away because they're discs.
You have knife skills. What are you talking about?
My first week at Just Roots, I had taken the top of my finger, it's all grown back, and my nail off, and I was embarrassed to tell them that I was going to be hosting the cooking classes. But I think being a lefty makes it a little difficult, like watching other people do it, and it's backwards for you, but. And I'll just give it a second to wait for everyone to be done with their carrots so we can do the next step together. Not sure if anyone does this already, but I like to keep a compost bowl or even a bowl that goes into the trash right by me so I don't have to run around all the time and I have a clean workstation. It's really revolutionized my kitchen game. And if you are finished, something you could get out, if you have a 4th cup measuring cup, either liquid or dry, it really doesn't matter because it doesn't have to be perfect. You can grab one of those so we can measure out our vinegar and water. And additionally, we're gonna want 1 tablespoon. Some folks can do it by eye. I'm not very good at that, so I'm gonna use a tablespoon. And this kind of quick pickling that's not quite pickling and it's not on the stove infusing vinegar, I've pulled from a lot of, spent a lot of time in Vietnamese kitchens where it's like a quick, light kind of thing used in fish sauces and other dishes and vermicelli noodle bowls. So it's not super potent, but it's nice to get a really good kick in your dishes. So what I'm doing right now is measuring out 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. And also trying not to eat it because I want sugar right now. And then I'm gonna drop it right in my bowl on top of the carrots. We're gonna use this again so you don't have to put it away. And then I'm gonna add my vinegar, and that's a 1/4 cup. If you're not a vinegar fan, I don't know if anyone hates vinegar, but I know some people do. You could really use a teensy tiny bit. It doesn't make a huge difference. But I think, do you have a question, dear?
Emmy has a question.
Just make sure you say your name too. Okay?
My name's Fiona.
Hi, Fiona.
And I'm peeling my carrots, and I've made stuff with a lot of carrots in it.
Really? What have you made before?
I've cut carrots into circles, and most of the time I just eat carrots.
Well, maybe next time you can teach us our cutting skills. So I'm doing 1/4 cup of vinegar and 1/4 cup of water. If you want less vinegar, feel free to just substitute that with more water.
1/4 cup water.
And again, this is all going into our carrots to sit and let them marinate. The last little step, please forgive me, I never measure salt because I just can't. But really, you're just using a pinch of salt. You can't really, well, you can overdo it, but you can't underdo it. It just helps bring the flavors out. When you add salt to raw fruits and vegetables, it makes them sweat. You'll see it especially in eggplant. If you cut an eggplant, put salt on it, literally it just fills with beads of water. So that's pretty neat. But yeah, once you've got your brown sugar, vinegar, and water and a little pinch of salt, you can go ahead and stir that in. And you'll see that the brown sugar will dissolve immediately. If any folks subbed out brown sugar, which that's totally fine, same thing, just stir it right in there and let it sit. I like to, as if I was making kimchi or something, I like to try to push, let me make sure you can see this. I like to push the carrots down on the sides to make sure they're inside of the vinegar solution.
Hold on, honey. What are your questions? Let's measure this one.
Great. And when you're done with that, you can just set it aside. We're not going to touch it till we're making our rolls. This is kind of a nice dish being all vegetarian because you don't have to wash your cutting boards over and over again and your knives. You can use the same ones, less dish duty. Okay, for those of you who are ready, we're gonna chop some garlic. I really like how the flavor combines with the garlic and the sweet potato to make it more savory. You can skip the garlic, it's not necessary, but I always enjoy learning other people's ways of using and chopping garlic. I have a few secret trades, which I'm not doing right now, but I will show you in another cooking class that I'm excited about. Some garlic magic. I'm doing 2 cloves because I love garlic. You can just do 1. You can do more or less. Never have enough. And you're just going to try to get it pretty small. just mince it. Everyone's so quiet. You don't need to do this. I'm just kind of intense about having other things on my cutting board and not pushing them off, but I'm just moving it onto a plate on the side for now. So everyone should have a decent sized sweet potato in their bag or two. I'm just going to use one because I'm just cooking for me. But next comes the sweet potato time. So folks who do not like the skins, we'll give you a minute to peel those off. I'm going to leave them on, as I mentioned before. I need that dietary roughage in my system, and I like having the skins have a lot of the vitamins and nutrients, but no problem if you want to just hack them right off. I always start with cutting the ends off. And then keep in mind that if these are organically grown, and because they don't have pesticides sprayed all over them, they may have little holes or parts that you're going to want to cut out, and that's okay. It's better that way, I think. I'd rather eat a bug than a chemical. And so the goal here is that we want to get the sweet potato into, like, thin is more important than shape. And so there's a couple different ways you can do it. What I like to do is give myself a flatter surface and cut in half. And then what I'm going to do is look to make somewhat, these are pretty thin. They don't have to be this thin. Let's see, can you see that? It's hard to line it up with the camera. Yeah, it doesn't really matter how big, how small, but you want this, you want to decrease your cooking time for this. If you were not caring about how much time it's going to take, you could lop some big slices and deep fry them on a pan, and it would be delicious as well. But I'm going for like a quarter inch. And if you guys are already quickly ahead of me and you've already cut up your sweet potatoes, you can go ahead and stick a couple tablespoons of olive oil or whatever oil of choice on a nice flat skillet. I used a nonstick because it's so easy to clean, but use whatever you'd like.
Brooke,
Yes.
is there an alternative to frying the sweet potato?
So yeah, you can, I've actually seen the recipe online where people have it raw. If you're really used to raw foods, I'm just not used to that. I tried a bite of it and I wasn't in love with it. But if you have an air fryer, or if you can also oven bake it, I would probably just stick it at like 350. You might be finishing up a little bit after us, but at least you have a way that you enjoy eating your food, and that's more important anyways. And if you want to use olive oil, you can, obviously, or if you have a splat mat, you could do that. I think roasting is often the better way to do sweet potatoes because it brings out the starches in a really nice way. But this dish, it's going to be delicious.
Thank you.
Sure. So I am now going to measure out my olive oil. You can do anywhere from 1 to 3 tablespoons. Since I'm using nonstick, I'll probably do like 1.5 to 2. But if you were using a really, coarse, wide, flat iron, I would probably push it up to 3. Another thing to note that I really like doing, I don't have any now, but I would substitute a tiny bit of sesame oil into this olive oil just to give it a little extra taste. But you don't want to do like a whole tablespoon because sesame oil is, to me, quite overpowering in a dish sometimes. It's delicious, but could be a little overpowering. So I'm going to toss in, turn your stoves on medium heat. I have an electric stove. That's what worked for me. I would assume that most stoves would be great for this recipe on medium heat. And I'm going to throw in my sweet potatoes and give them a stir. If they're covering one another, it's not a big deal. The goal here is just to get them soft and cooked. They don't need to be crunchy because we have other wonderful crunchy ingredients that are going to be going in the dish. So if they're kind of like layering on top of each other, don't worry about it. The goal is to soften them, unless you want to fry them. And then I would say spread them out and don't let them touch each other very much, but that's not the main plan for this dish. And try to make sure that the olive oil is evenly coated on your sweet potatoes. While you're cooking, keep in mind ideas for recipes or cultural traditions or foods that you want to explore for next month, because I'd love to hear feedback for that and to challenge myself to learn new things too. Sweet potatoes can be, or not sweet, spring rolls can be a little tricky on the wrapping side of things. So I want to make sure we save time for that, and we're doing great on time. So in about 2 minutes, once that oil's heating up and your sweet potatoes are starting to sizzle or soften, we're going to add the garlic. Sometimes I like to add it in at the very beginning and make like a really good, intense garlic infused oil. But for this recipe, I think it's better to add it in after. I've tried it both ways and I like it after. One thing I do like to do uses quite a bit of paper towel, but I like to drain my sweet potatoes afterwards. You end up getting so much olive oil come off onto the paper towel. So if you want to just, once they're done, have a paper towel and plate ready, that might be a nice way to catch some of that excess oil. And when folks are ready, we're going to be multitasking, which is always a hard thing to do in the kitchen, but we'll make sure that these are being stirred around once in a while. And then we're also going to start working on our cucumbers. Great. So I'm going to matchstick these just because I think it looks really pretty. And when I say that, I don't know if you've ever had cucumber sushi, but the cucumber is in like little skinny rectangles, and I think it just works really well for this dish. So I like to chop, I have half of a cucumber here. I like to chop it in 4, then in half, then in quarters. There's no wrong way to skin a cucumber or to chop a cucumber, so. So you end up with these nice little slivers. And if you have a bowl or a plate that you want to put them on, you can do that. These are again just a topping. They're going to sit off to the side. I watched this beautiful video the other night of a sushi chef peeling just the peel off of the cucumber so perfectly and then like shredding it into the tiniest of matchsticks, and it was very satisfying. That might be a fun class, making our own sushi. Vegetable sushi, maybe.
That sounds good.
Or a sushi burrito.
Mm. Yes.
My potatoes just started sizzling. I'm just gonna give them a little stir, and then I'll add my garlic in a little bit. I'm not quite there yet.
Being a weirdo. Way being weird.
Careful. You got it?
Want to sit next to me? Come sit right next to me. You come over here.
Makes me so happy to see kids in the kitchen working with their parents. Such a beautiful thing to do as a family. And I'm giving mine another stir. I can tell it's starting to soften a little bit. But I'm gonna add the garlic in just a minute. Does medium heat on people with gas stoves seem to be, the potatoes are cooking okay? I'm gonna add my garlic now. Look at all these busy bodies cooking away. Now I tend to salt and pepper mine afterwards. My friend who's a professional chef told me that you're not supposed to heat pepper. It loses a lot of its flavor. I still do it anyways, but I'm waiting to salt and pepper afterwards. You could definitely put salt on now if you'd like to. While this is still cooking, I do think a lightly salted cucumber is the best combination in the world, second to salted tomato. So I'm gonna just put a tiny bit of salt. And you can stir these too and set them to the side if you added salt. Now for the next part, depending on what method you're using, you may want to start heating your water. If you're doing it on the stove top, you could start heating it or in a kettle. But we're really just gonna, you can heat 1 to 2 cups of water, let's say 2 to be safe. And we're going to get that water pretty much to a boil. If it hits a boil, that's fine too. You'll let it cool off for a second. And we'll continue to stir, and then we're gonna start making our delicious peanut sauce. Okay. I'm not sure how folks feel about starting on the peanut sauce. Feeling okay about it? Okay, so this one's pretty easy too. We're just gonna do a half a cup of peanut butter or nut butter. Is anyone working with nut butter today? If you're working with nut butter, sometimes it can be a little bit thicker depending on the kind. I didn't see what everyone got. So keep that in mind when we're thinking about adding water. If it's thinner than normal peanut butters, then you want to add less water than the peanut butter recipe. If you want to show me yours, we can also look at it together. But we are going to do a half cup of peanut butter or nut butter. And I'm actually going to turn my sweet potatoes down to a low or warm heat for now. Just while I'm making this sauce, and I want to not have to keep a diligent eye on them. I feel really lucky that my whole kitchen is like this, so I can reach from here to my sink or stove. I feel bad when y'all are coming back and forth to the computer from your spot. Okay, so I have a half cup of very sticky peanut butter. I'm gonna put it in my bowl. If you can eye a half cup, kudos to you. I'd say it's probably just under a third of this little container of peanut butter that you got. My goal is to get as much peanut butter on the spoon and not in the container. Good. Next, we can do some soy sauce. So this might seem like a lot, but because these are all strong flavors, we're actually going to use 2 whole tablespoons of soy sauce.
Half a cup of peanut butter. I got the peanut butter.
What did you say?
Nothing.
You can't eat all the peanut butter before we finish the dinner either. Okay, and then we're gonna do 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. And again, if you want to substitute for something else, that's fine. Lightly packed is fine. I love how it comes out in a perfect little scoop. And then we're gonna do, I think we all got like similar sized limes in our packets. Pretty small limes. We're gonna do the whole thing. I put a half in the recipe, but they're pretty small, so I'm gonna do the whole juice of 1 lime. Just cut it in half. If you have a little citrus squeezer, awesome. If not, feel free to dig your fingers in there to get out all the glorious juice. I think the acidity is pretty important in this. And one thing to check on, I know we're balancing a lot at once and you all are doing amazing, but if your sweet potatoes are fork tender, or you can take whatever cooking implement you have and very gently and lightly cut through it, you can go ahead and turn that off and let those start to cool. So I'm going to check mine. Not quite for, oh, I'm going to leave it on for just another minute. I'm getting the rest of this lime juice in here. And before we even add the water, we're gonna check on the consistency because we don't want to add too much water and have it just be really drizzly. So you're gonna start to stir, and at first it's like, wait, are these ingredients ever gonna melt together? But they do, I promise. And if folks who have nut butter want any consulting, I'd be happy to provide that. So at first it's gonna, yeah, I can show you on here. It kind of is like, that's never gonna come together, but it will, I promise. Just keep stirring. Okay, now it's looking like peanut butter again. A little bit more. So I am going to add some water. Folks, my sweet potatoes are just about where I like them. So I'm going to turn them off. Let them sit in the pan a little more. So for the water, I would suggest starting off, I mean, you can put somewhere between an 1/8 and a 1/4 cup of water into this dish and it'll still be okay. But I'm going to fill the 1/4 cup, but not put it in all at once. I'm going to start with just a little dash and go ahead and work that in. I'm going to add a little more. It's kind of surprising that water is a part of the sauce, isn't it? And I'm going to add a little more. Looks like I probably will be using a whole 1/4 cup on mine. I'm probably at about an 1/8 cup. And I'm going to finish it off for a 1/4. One thing that you could do, if you like a little heat, I suggest putting in sambal, which is like a garlic chili sauce, or just some red pepper. That would be a great addition. I'm just not crazy about extra heat all the time, so I'm not going to do it. So now you have a really soft, good dipping texture. If you wanted to drizzle it on top of or inside of your spring rolls, you could definitely add a little more water or a little more lime, but just be careful of not going too overboard. But to me, if I was going to dip a spring roll in that, this is what I want it to be like. It's moussey, it's soft. I want to swim in it. All right. Okay, I'm all stirred through. I'm gonna take my moment to clean up my space a little because I'm a very messy kitchen cook. Okay, so you should have your peanut sauce or whatever kind of nut sauce or seed. We've got cucumbers, shredded carrots and vinegar sauce. Your sweet potatoes are coming off the pan, nice and garlicky. Sometimes the garlic makes a nice crunch, which is really nice too. And I'm still sticking those onto my paper towel so I can drain off some of the excess oil. And I'm turning my tea kettle on high. It's only going to take me a minute to heat up, so that's nice. And so this is kind of important, and hopefully everyone can hear me at least, but sweet potato, or I keep calling spring rolls sweet potatoes. Spring rolls are not sweet potatoes. I'm gonna have it clear now. But the idea of doing spring rolls is that you wanna get the rice papers hot and you wanna get them melty, but not too melty. Has anyone used spring roll wrappers before? Oh, someone has, cool.
I have.
Lynn has.
Penelope has.
Penelope has, cool. So maybe I'll share my little technique that I do, but if you have one you want to share too, that's great. What I like to do is get a bowl and that's shallow and wide, but you could use a pasta pan or a saucepan. It doesn't even have to be wide. If you only have tiny bowls, you can make it work with this method. But what I like to do is I'll hold it at the tip tops. Is this very clear on my screen?
Mhm.
Okay, and I go like this into the water
Oh,
a few times. I was taught this at a Vietnamese restaurant, so I hope it works for everyone. And you do want to make sure you hit the center, but I do this for about 10 seconds. The reason why you don't want to just drop it in is it becomes hard to get up. And then the sides fold in, but if you kind of keep this motion, it tends to work pretty well. I turned on the wrong burner. There we go. So that is my secret tip, and it usually works. Now, I'm going to tell you, just give yourself some grace in this process because I mess up all the time. And sometimes they're beautiful and perfect, and sometimes you're like, okay, never mind. I don't want to do this again. But it's fun. I love doing it with a group of people and laugh at each other's mistakes and learn more. So one thing that is important is that you don't want to do this on a surface that the rice paper is going to want to stick to. So a plate works pretty well. I'm going to be using just one of my kitchen plates that the rice paper fits on. So when I'm talking about when I'm actually filling and making my roll and wrapping it, if you put it on a wooden cutting board, I think that the rice paper might stick to it. So you might want a surface that's nice and smooth. Once my water's at boiling or just under boiling, I'm going to pour it into my container. Let me make sure
Brooke, I've never done it boiling. I've usually done it like warm.
You can do it just, I find it's easier to work with when it's really hot.
Mhm.
But do it, if it's more comfortable for you, please do it just hot.
I mean, if you start with boiling, then it's going to last as warm longer. So I'm kind of thinking that's a good idea.
That's why I do it, because I use such wide
Yeah,
containers, so it gets cold so fast.
exactly. So yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Cool. And so basically we're going to move fast when it happens, because you don't want to leave your rice paper sitting there for too long or else it gets mushy. So I'm going to be ready to grab my next one. And what I'm going to do is put the sweet potato on the rice paper first, right in the center. And I promise to show you this on the camera. And then I'll put my toppings in. Something to note that you can use, if you have any lettuce at home, if you have avocado or any other vegetables that you think would be really tasty in there, please feel free to cut those up and add them in. Just stuff them in there because I think it could only get better. And so what I like to do is kind of line up everything I'm working with. The first step is hot water. The second step is the roll. And then I've got my toppings on the far left-hand side. One thing I've I think is important to mention, you guys got a big pack of these rice papers. You want to put them in a container that is airtight, or you'll notice this is exposed to air and humidity and it's already shrinking up. So it'll keep your rice papers lasting longer if you put them in a Ziploc or some kind of closed container. Should you want to make them again and aren't terrified because this was a nightmare. It won't be a nightmare, it'll be great. All right, here goes nothing. Pouring my water. I did a cup and a half. And I'm gonna let it cool for a quick second. Now I wanna make sure everyone can see what I'm doing.
Brooke, when you say toppings, you mean fillings or toppings?
I meant fillings.
Okay, that's all, I
Yeah.
just want to be clear. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Sometimes people put fried garlic, scallions on the inside, like green onions. That would also be really tasty if you want to use those as toppings. I think scallions or green onions would be really good in the peanut sauce too.
What about fresh herbs,
Oh yeah, that's
cilantro or
huge.
basil?
When it's herb season, I want to make these again, maybe not on the cooking class, but maybe an event at Just Roots, because when we have fresh basil, when we have cilantro, like that is such an amazing
Yeah.
summer addition of spring rolls, and it's so good to have fresh herbs. Okay, so I'm doing my spin. And making sure to get the little center part. Now you might notice that it still feels a little hard to the touch in some areas or on the whole thing, and that's okay. It will make do. So I laid down some sweet potato. I'm a little bit off the edges, if you can see. Not like the edge because it's translucent. I'm gonna put in my carrots. Put in your cucumber. If you wanted to add any other ingredients you have at home, like avocados, lettuce, go for it. Let me see. All right, so I'm taking, like a burrito, one edge rolling over lightly, the other edge rolling over lightly. I'm going to take the bottom edge and kind of come over and use my fingers to scoop under the spring roll and press. It's kind of an art, and which I have not perfected, and you push the wrapper under and give it another roll. And then you've got, oh, where's the camera? A nice little sweet potato on one side, greens on the other, great for dipping. So then I would put them to the side on a plate while you make your next one. It's okay to mess up. Just keep trying. And someone remind me if we have time to talk about my favorite recipe using rice paper rolls. I would love to do that. It's very many steps compared to this, but it's so good. There are other ways you can roll it too. It doesn't have to be in the burrito fashion. I like to experiment with different ones. It's quite similar, but. So this time I'm coming from the bottom edge, pulling up, tucking the ingredients in, pressing down. Then I'm going in through the sides. Then I flip the whole roll over. Sometimes I feel like this makes a tighter wrap for me. Now you'll also notice sometimes you have these little wobbly edges for a little bit. Once you leave that that spring roll sitting on your plate for a while, those edges will kind of disappear and they will like meld into the rest of the spring roll paper. If anyone does indeed successfully make one from the start, please do show us. I want to see. I should mention that spring rolls are my favorite food group next to pickles. So I'm very used to making these, but they are pretty tricky.
Amy's and her daughter have one there.
Oh my goodness, that looks beautiful. That's fantastic work.
Yay.
Yay.
It feels kind of sticky.
It does feel sticky. And that's because, do you like to eat rice?
Yeah.
It's made from rice, and it's made from the starch in rice, the really sticky carbohydrate. It's kind of cool.
Oh, that's why it feels so sticky.
Yeah, that's why it feels so sticky and why it sticks to itself. So we can use it as like its own burrito. This one a little small, but
Brooke, I do it the way you're doing it now, where you put it over first and tuck and then put the sides in.
I
That's-
prefer to do that way. It just seems to make it a neater spring roll.
Yeah.
One thing also I want to point out, sometimes if you stick them to like on top of one another, when you pull them apart, you could get a tear. So it's best to space them out on a plate. I'm not doing that because I'm just gonna shove them in my mouth by myself when we finish this. So I don't care if they're messy. And so yeah, my water is.
Oh, Becky got hers too.
What'd you say?
Becky?
Where's Beck? Oh my gosh, gorgeous. Aren't they just a work of art when they're finished? It's just so beautiful. Nice work.
Anyone else? We'd love to see.
We did pretty good on time. I'm surprised. We plowed through it. Thanks for moving so quickly with me, everyone. And I was a little nervous, you know, not really knowing how long it would take to explain everything, but it was awesome. I think I have room for one more. And if your water gets too cool, mine's about at the point that it's a little too cool, you can always reheat it and make some more. And so if I do have a moment to share some of my favorite spring roll recipes, I would love to. There is a Vietnamese spring roll that's actually deep fried, which you can do at home. And you can use ground, I love deep fried food, but you can use ground pork, ground chicken, ground tofu, regular slabs of tofu, seitan, anything you want, egg even, and mix with cabbage. This would be a good one during cabbage season at Just Roots. And some mushrooms if you'd like, carrots, and basically you make your spring roll and then you drop it in a deep fryer. But there's a very, very important key feature to make them really bubbly and crunchy. And it's either you need to dip your spring roll wrapper when you're doing this water situation. You want to dip it in 1 cup to 1 tablespoon of sugar water, or in beer instead of water. It's weird, but it really makes a huge difference. One thing I forgot to mention is you can put your sauce inside the wrap too if you don't want to just dip it. I waited too long for this one. You know, and one other very common thing to do with spring rolls is pound some kind of meat or tofu pretty flat, and you cook it on the stovetop or in the oven, which I know some folks would prefer. Oh, beautiful! They look amazing. How is this most of your first time doing this? I can't even tell you how crazy mine were when I first did them. This is so great. If anyone wants to snap a picture quick for us and send it to us so we can post it on our social media, no pressure to do that, but we'd love to see your creations. Gorgeous. I see that, Janet. Janet and Christine, thank you for sharing those. Yay. Yeah, but pounding chicken, steak, you could use tofu, cooking it on the stove or in the oven like that, and put some brown sugar on it when you cook it so it gets a smoky flavor, and then wrap your spring roll. Oh my goodness. Pack it with herbs. So exciting. I should mention too, folks, we are, oh, there we go. There's another spring roll on Amy's Zoom page.
I wrapped it myself.
Oh my goodness, that is amazing. Great work. You're gonna have to teach all your friends now. We are, I want to say this because I'm responsible for hosting events and workshops at Just Roots and really want to involve community as much as possible in those things. But one of the things we're hoping to do is a community potluck, and where folks can bring whatever they like to cook or not bring anything at all and have a nice time with our community members in an outdoor setting using COVID safety protocols. It would just be nice to see everyone in person and get to share food in person too at some point. And I know that's not a thing that everyone can do, but would be good to see some of your faces there. While we have a couple more minutes, I would love to hear if anyone had something particularly, well, first off, that they want to share, and second, that they might want to do for next month's cooking class. I'm thrilled to see how many people are here, and I want to keep this going.
What do you think? Is there anything you think we should make sure we do? Any cooking class that you were curious about?
I want to learn how to make
What was that? We missed it.
Fiona just wants to learn how to make brownies.
Maybe Fiona could teach a class on brownies. I bet Fiona can do that. I want to show off mine too. I'm pretty proud.
Sure.
Anyone else have ideas for recipes or things they want to share? You guys are just dying to get eating, huh?